Resume recording, and our recording light's on. Awesome. As I've said before, Twitter and LinkedIn, feel free to message out, take screen grabs, whatever you want. As the session goes through, this is our last and final session, of course. Mute your mics unless we have time for questions at the end. It'll just depend. I think we might have some question time available to us at the end. Use chat, as I've said before. Use it to, if there's any idea that resonates with you. Just a couple of things. I have got a cold. It's middle of summer and I've got the flu, which is a pain in the butt. So forgive my voice if it sounds weird. Keep an eye on Facebook group if anyone's struggling to get in. Last week, when I was doing the cohort session in the evening, or the Northern Hemisphere, I joined the Southern Hemisphere link. And so everybody was waiting in the other one, and no one was in the Southern Hemisphere. This is at night. And I'm like, okay, perhaps nobody's joining today. But finally, someone jumped in that session and said, we noticed that you're in the wrong one. So keep an eye on Facebook for anybody struggling to get in. Recordings will be posted in 12 hours, as I've said before. Please complete metrics that matter. That would be very much appreciated. And remember, Facebook engagement for your assignments. I'm loving the videos I'm seeing coming through. They're so good. I just think it brings out another dimension that's more than just, people typing their responses. And it's been so good to see the creativity flow over, over this period of time and seeing what people come up with. So, of course, today's session was all around career path. And why I put this session in is that I've had people come to me. I'll give you an example of a guy from Fender Guitars, the big Fender brand of electric guitars in the US. And he was an administrator. He was an internal CRM administrator. And that's basically how he moved from IT into this role. And I explained, he was on this course last year. And I went through and I explained all the different possible career paths that you can have. And really, this is the module that deals with what are actually all the options. For him, he just told me recently that he's left Fender and he's gone to work for a partner. He didn't realize there was you could get into multiple projects. Sometimes working customer side, you can get stuck on the same project unless they have a DevOps type scenario running. And so, yeah, he was so excited to say where he is moving off to. And I had another person, this one was in America as well. And he basically found himself in a career in Microsoft Biz Apps, but it just wasn't what he wanted to do. And once I laid out the landscape of what was possible, he then moved up to Canada and took a role up there, which is more aligned with where he wanted to go as an individual. Just recently, another person on my cohorts from, he was from Perth in Western Australia, and he was working for a partner, and he has moved customer side. And working on a big contract with the state police in Perth. So really exciting to see people making the decision to make changes when they find themselves in roles or jobs that kind of are not really where they feel they want to be long term. So totally awesome to see kind of people reinventing or changing the course of their career through this process. And so my question for you is, where are you going to go? Like, what's stretching out in front of you? Really, you have the opportunity to go anywhere you want. You can choose the path that you're on. And I love this quote here. Where is it? Bring up my quote. Oops. It's not there. It's on another slide. My bad. But anyhow, I don't know if you know, where does this saying come from? Does anyone want to say in the chat, where does the word, Mark, it's hard to understand you. Why is it hard to understand me? Is I'm not loud enough? Let me just go a bit louder. 1 second. Hey, Mark, it's hard to understand you. Correct. Okay. Open sound settings. 1 second. I will just bump my microphone up a bit. Microphone, device options. And hopefully that is better now. Can you hear me clear? Better? Is that louder? Before I continue on. Okay, awesome. Okay, so other places you'll go. Does anyone know where this quote comes from? From a childhood book by Dr. Seuss. And in it, the whole story is, it's a child's book, and it's just one that's resonated with both me and my wife, is this kind of, really, the places that you go in life become your choice unless you get into a rut. And so as we go through this, see where you are, what role you kind of sit in at the moment. I'm going to go through, explain the various roles as I see them, and then really leave it up to you to go, where are you sitting now, and kind of where do you want to go in the future. So first off, let's take a look at the role of functional consultant. And, you know, when I look at the functional consultant, some people might say this could also a functional BA or business analyst is another term I've seen for this. But when I think of a functional consultant, there's someone that knows about business and business processes and basically how to gather requirements and uncover what the customer need is. And the functional bit is that they know the technology. And so they know how to map that to technology. You can see that a functional consultant can be partner side, they can work for customers, or they could be a freelancer in this role. You know, I've seen some amazing functional consultants, and you know, some of the things that a functional consultant does is discovery. They run discovery workshops. They capture requirements. They engage the subject matter experts within an organization and understand and uncover what the need is and then map that to the technology. So they work with the various stakeholders. They translate requirements. They configure the solution and application, and they implement a solution using out-of-the-box capabilities. They use codeless extensibility. Application and service integration is also part of what they know. So for me, across my career as a manager of many, many consultants, I have never required my consultants to do any coding if they were a functional consultant. I expect them to be brilliant communicators. I expect them to be brilliant understanders of business. And I expect them to be able to do anything out of the box within Dynamics. I expect them to know, I have a good understanding of what ISV solutions are out there in the market that can enable the customer without having to, if you like, build something from scratch. So I expect them to have a broad understanding. They should know how all the tool sets function together, and then enable, help, train, demo, take the customers on a journey of unraveling what those subject experts and those stakeholders are needing and implement it within their business in a usable and highly functional way. So that's the first role. The second one we look at is what kind of skills does a functional consultant have? As I said, they're an effective communicator, right? They're part of the delivery team. They engage with the stakeholders, and they're very good at communicating inside their business and also outside. In other words, they're good at communicating with the project they're on, but also communicating back into the other project stakeholders. They have a strong applied knowledge. Often a functional consultant might come from a strong area or background of subject matter expertise. So for example, you know, if I had a partner practice and, you know, we had a strong focus in healthcare, I might recruit my functional consultants as BAs to start with, maybe from the medical industry, former nurses, doctors, that type of thing, and then train them on the technology and have them move in to the area of becoming a functional consultant. So they have a strong industry strength, and they'll have an in-depth understanding of customization, configuration, integration, and extensibility, as well as know the boundaries of those constraints, know how far they can push the technology before going, okay, we need to involve a developer. We need to develop a plugin or a workflow assembly, or, you know, integrate to Azure or something like that, or other third parties. They have a good knowledge of Office 365 and Microsoft Azure. What are the tools that we can integrate with, and how other applications within that space can enhance their role. Their experience may include, but is not limited to, I expect configuring and security models. They should be very good at understanding security models, customizing the form, views, visualization, processes, configuring entities and relationships, managing solution instances, and configuring for mobile. That should all be 101 stuff. You know, they might also have a range of skills in some of the kind of extensibility products like portals. Of course, very thorough understanding of now the Power Platform, and particularly Flow and Power Apps and how that plays into the story, as well as have a good understanding, of course, of Power BI. Excuse me. Okay. Next, what roles do they interact with? What roles does a functional consultant generally interact with the team? So they implement the design provided and in collaboration with the solution architect, right? Sometimes on projects, I wouldn't even put a solution architect on because my functional consultants are strong enough to run the solution architecture themselves. They implement the standards, branding, and artifacts to establish a user experience design. They have a keen focus for user experience where others sometimes don't. Often a functional consultant will. They design for integration of fields and points for collaboration. And I say, back to it, works tightly with an architect. It might be an application architect or a solution architect that they work with. They interface with the quality assurance. So the testing of the requirements, the validation, is it in line? They'll have strong understanding of project management methodologies, you know, whether it be Scrum, Agile, Lean, or any other type of methodology, Waterfall, Microsoft Dynamics Zero Step. They'll have a good understanding of project methodologies and what part they play in that. They identify and generate and deliver artifacts for packaging and deployment for DevOps engineers, right? So if you're in a customer side, they'll work strongly with DevOps engineers. Somebody not on mute. Let's mute them out there. Okay, and we'll provide operations and maintenance training to administrators, right? So once the system is built, they'll generally hand over to administrators or in a DevOps, an operations engineer to maintain the system as it moves forward from that point. Okay, let's look at the next key role, and that is the role of developer. So the developer, of course, basically extends a platform beyond what you can do around configuration and customization or integration with third-party tools. Once again, developers can be freelancers, they can work for customers, they can work for partners in their role. The type of, what else do they do? So they're responsible for designing and developing, securing and extending the platform implementation, right? They have a very good sense or good understanding of security around making sure that they don't break the model that Microsoft has in place. They don't break any of the rules around creating the solutions. They implement application enhancements. They implement custom user experiences, particularly around Power Apps component framework these days. They implement system integrations. They implement data conversion, so triaging of data between systems, custom process automation, and custom visualizations. These are all kind of roles that will either involve, you know, opening up Visual Studio and developing either front-end script or back-end code to actually extend the technology beyond what you could do out of pure customization and configuration. The type of skills they may interface, the type of skills of a developer. Generally, I would expect them to have JavaScript, TypeScript, C#, HTML, .NET, and Microsoft Azure skill sets. They must expose, store, and report upon data in the platform and how that interoperates with other parts of the system. They must have a strong applied knowledge of the Power Platform and Dynamics 365. One thing I often found is developers will start building stuff that's available out of the box because they don't know. And I would always require my developers to do the foundational training on Dynamics and the Power Platform so they thoroughly understood what was there and didn't try to build something that didn't need building. The other mandate I'd always go is there a third-party solution that can solve this problem before we cut code and create our own? Because once you create code, there comes a thing called technical debt, and maintaining, Siri's talking to me, maintaining that code over time is more of a heavy lift or ongoing maintenance than if you used a third-party solution where somebody else is responsible for that. You know, things like in the past, we used to use JavaScript a lot to do interface manipulation. A lot of that's done now with business rules and flows and workflows within the product. So we don't need to do that. So the better way is to use the out-of-the-box functionality where possible, and only when you reach a limitation should you consider, switching to actually developing something. The roles they interact with, of course, as a solution architect, I'll work closely with them. They'll validate the implementation approach, you know, raise any concerns about what's been suggested. They will have good user experience design background. They'll interface with user experience design, which is a new thing for a lot of developers. A lot of developers have come from the mindset, you ask for a field, there's a field. Doesn't matter if it looks good, if it functions well, or if it's positioned in a way that makes logical sense. And so this is changing a lot. A lot more developers are realizing that the whole sense of style, how effective the location, etc., affects adoption. So that's becoming more prominent. Of course, they engage with functional consultants, DevOps engineers. They're part of the dev part that interfaces with the ops part, the operations part. So there's definitely an interface there They will understand exactly, you know, the limitations of flow and know where they need to use other technologies to extend beyond that. And often, once again, they'll be engaged with administrators when it comes to understanding what's been built, what the functionality is, and how that all comes together. Hang on a second, I can hear too much noise outside. I'll just close my window. Someone's doing some cutting. There we go. Got a skylight above me, I'll close it off. Okay, so blah, blah, blah. What do they do? They're accountable for leading successful Power Platform and Dynamics 365 implementations. This is the role of the solution architect. Notice my gray arrow comes down out of those two roles. So I've said either from a functional or a dev, you could ultimately end up becoming a solution architect. I find in my experience, they come from both parts of the business. But the key word here is that the architect is accountable, right, for leading the successful implementation on the Power Platform or Dynamics related project. And this is a critically important because I've seen many architects abdicate responsibility to the project manager. The project manager's job is to run a smooth project. It's the architect's job to deliver something that meets the customer's requirements, and I ultimately always have the final authority on something is always my solution architect, never my project manager. Sometimes project managers think they're the king of the castle and like to run everything, or that, you know, once the project's handed to them, the whole thing's about methodology of running projects, not about what's being delivered. And I'll never forget one of my staff saying to me, you know, when I go buy a TV, I don't care how it was made. I don't care if they used a short production line, a long production line, whether they run scrum meetings and stand-ups each morning. I just want a TV. That's what I'm going to buy. Remember, at the end of the day, the work we do for our customers, we're delivering an experience for them that meets the organization requirements and generally will make that company more productive, efficient, effective, that type of thing. At the end of the day, project management is a means to an end. It is not the end. And I say that with a bit of force because I tell you, I've had some dramas with project managers in the past wanting to overrule the architect. As I say, in my mind, with their responsibility of being an architect, they're also accountable for the delivered solution at the end of the day. Okay, roles they interact with, all the common ones that we've already talked about, functional and dev, of course, that they'll interact with. That when I look at their skills of an architect, I would expect the following. They would maybe they'll understand development. Like, I've never been a developer, but I understand code. I can read it. I can understand what's been asked for, and I can understand if my team are not being 100% honest with me in respect to what can be developed or what's possible, what's not possible. They'll know everything around integration. They'll have a good understanding of infrastructure, security, availability, storage, services. They'll understand what's new and what should be adopted. They'll know how to stand back from the bleeding edge, but still be on the cutting edge. And they'll know how to balance business requirements with technology requirements. And that is a key skill of the architect. They will be broadly across everything, but often have a deep skill in a few areas. They know where to bring in people to mitigate where they don't have skills. So they don't try and fudge anything because they're such a linchpin in the way the entire project will run. You know, they interact with all the main people: developers, functional consultants, project managers, change managers, business managers, DevOps, and administrators. Are all the type of roles. They'll have a deep understanding of Microsoft's entire stack, but not limited to that. They'll understand where third-party solutions, third-party products outside of Microsoft might be needed as part of the project, might need to be integrated. So they're not just a pure Microsoft fanboy. That might be the foundation of their architecture, but it's not the only thing they're focused on. They're keeping abreast of what's happening over in AWS. They're keeping abreast of what's happening over in Salesforce. They're keeping abreast of what's happening in Oracle and IBM and Google. They're understanding all those things and asking themselves, how does this affect what I'm doing? How does this affect what I'm architecting in a project? And as I said, basically, I've seen people come from a functional consultant background or a developer background and become solution architects. You can definitely come from either. Some of my strongest architects have come from a very deep functional background. They understand business at the end of the day. Sometimes they come from like an accounting background or a process automation type background and make brilliant solution architects because they don't just become technology focused. Developers also, I've seen developers become very creative and build up their skills in communications and other parts that maybe they're not been strong on to become effective solution architects. What I have found though, is that if a solution architect comes from a developer background and they haven't learned how to communicate, they are not good solution architects. And I'll tell you why. They can be brilliant technologists, absolutely fantastic. But if they can't communicate with a customer confidently, their idea, their concept they're putting through, you can derail projects. And I've seen it in my own career where I've had very good technical architects that have come from a dev background, but failed to be effective communicators. They will kind of not be confident in their delivery of their solution. And so when the customer doesn't see confidence, they go, do they know what they're talking about? Now I can know because I know their skills. Yep, they know what they're talking about. But the problem is that the customer might go, not happy with that. And I've seen it time and time again on projects. Hence why it's so important that developers, to get their ideas across effectively, become solution architects, must be strong communicators. Okay, those are the kind of 3 core roles that I would see. Now, these roles are sometimes split. You can add BAs in, I've seen technical architects opposed to solution and app architecture and enterprise architecture. That they are the same and they're different, right? It all depends. Oftentimes people like to give themselves titles because it makes them feel important and kind of want to tell a story. Your results will tell a story at the end of the day. The value that you create and bring, no matter what your title is, will speak for itself. But that kind of gives you the 3 core roles I see in most projects around delivery. Next type of role that we'll look at is change managers. And change management, I think, is the single most important enhancement when a project is up and running with a project manager in place. The change manager is absolutely critical for success. Notice it can be partner, customer, freelancer type role. And the reason for this is 30 to 60% of all CRM projects fail. And if I were to put it down to one single thing, it is change management. Now, I know that's a broad statement, but in my experience, change management is the difference between a massively, wildly successful project and a project failure. A project is technically sound, but 3 months, 6 months after go live, it's just not been used. People have defaulted back to the old way because for whatever reason, the new way is not better. And people always vote with their actions and what they do. So change management, if you want to address the 30 to 60% of project failure, you need to make sure that change management is not about running a train the trainer session at the end of the project, right? Change management is critical for, I cannot stress enough. And if you really don't believe me, I recommend you do some ProSci training. ProSci is a change management methodology. As you can see there, people change results is their tagline. And I tell you, if you could add a string to your bow as a brilliant consultant, change management, because it doesn't matter if it's software, whether it's delivering a highway, whether it's creating a rocket, understanding the skill will affect every part of your career. And I cannot stress enough the importance of picking up a formal methodology like ProSci. Here's some stats that they put out there. Without change management, employees feel surprised and besieged by change, right? Nobody likes change. If I got you to write your signature and you're right-handed, you would do it pretty quickly. You wouldn't even think. You'd go on autopilot. The minute I said change your non-dominant hand, if you're left, right, etc., all of a sudden, it doesn't feel comfortable. You have to think about what you're doing. And whenever we switch an organization from one software technology to another, there's a switch that has to happen, and it creates a jarring experience. And so what happens if you don't have a change management project program in place? If senior management aren't adopted in on this, what will happen is that people will start going to senior management for whoever you're working for and say, you know what? This is a mess. The old way was much easier. It was much simpler, because change is hard and change needs to be be part of a journey. So notice some results here: failed project results, extended project schedules, additional project costs, and low adoption and usage. What happens when you use a methodology like ProSci? This is research data. Employees feel prepared, equipped, and supported. 6 times more likely to meet objectives, 5 times more likely to stay on schedule, 2 times likely to stay on budget, and capture people dependent return on investment. So important. I can't stress enough, but ProSci is full training course. You can get qualified in the area of ProSci. And if you have the opportunity or you need to create the opportunity, I highly recommend you do this. Okay, let's look at another role. What about sales? What if you want to get into sales and actually sell this technology, right? Selling Microsoft business applications is a fantastically fun job. I've done that through a lot of my career, is either directly selling or in a pre-sales type role, but I've never been too far away from sales, not just in this industry, but other industries as well. But the key thing to remember here is sales is everybody's job. It's not just those people that, have the flash suits on or whatever and goes out and closes a deal. It's everybody's job. Remember, a great consultant is always looking to add value and uncover opportunity. So you might hear a whisper on a project that you're going to feed back to your sales team. Your job is to be a feeder to the sales team, no matter what your role. But if you want to be a salesperson, I cannot stress enough, get professionally trained. People think people are natural born salespeople. They're not. There is a lot of training and methodology to become effective. A good salesperson never feels they make it. They're always constantly learning. I have this quote here: all I have learned, I've learned from books. And I tell you what, it's probably how I've learned the most. I never did well academically at school, but once I learned how to read from about 13 years of age onward, it enabled me to learn so much. And so for me, I get so much from my books that mentor me. So across my career, these are 4 key books that I highly, highly recommend if you're wanting to develop your sales skills. And remember, everybody in life is in sales. If you have a partner, you've sold them on the value of being with you at some point, right? You're always selling, whether it's a negotiation over dinner or inviting somebody out to an exciting event. You're always selling. So you want to learn some great skills. I recommend these books. If I just run through them quickly, Let's Get Real or Let's Not Play by Mahan Khalsa. Amazing, amazing book, because this guy, if you saw a photo of him back in the day, he looks like a hippie guru, big, long, flowing robes, beard and hair down to here. And yet this is a serious business book. And what I love about it, he's saying, listen, too much guessing goes on in sales. Just ask the question. And I just used, once again, a thing out of this book. I'm working on a project with Microsoft. I'm scoping a piece of project, and they want me to price for a year-long delivery of something for them. And, they want me to do a small, medium, and high pricing for this. And so what did I do? I said to them, listen, I could guess what your budget is, and, I could put a number in, and you could go, no, this is crazy, or that's, I said, so I don't do that. Let's be upfront. What do you think this is going to cost to deliver your outcomes? They gave me a number, and now I go away and I alter my pricing. I don't alter my pricing. I hadn't even created my pricing. But what I do, I now make sure that based on their constraints, I'm not trying to push something that's not going to fit within their budgets or their constraints. Really, really important, because I often see people trying to always upsell. It's like it's some kind of grandiose win to make. And I love this rule. Let's get real, let's not play. It just gives you, if you like, the questions to ask to get to our sales outcomes and be a person in doing it. High trust selling, the key feature in this book by Todd Duncan, I think he was in real estate selling, may have been, I can't remember. But what I loved about this book, and the takeaway, and I read this book years and years ago, was the concept of don't spend time on $5 an hour jobs. And like, what is it? What did he mean by that? Well, what he meant is that if your time is best spent, like if you, when you're in your sweet spot of doing your art, of creating what you do, if you're paid $100 an hour for that, don't be wasting time on $5 an hour jobs. What are $5? Like photocopying, like doing busy work, like doing things that somebody else that doesn't have the skill set that you have could be doing. You should get somebody else to do it. In other words, learn the art of delegation. Learn even to equip yourself with additional people and resources. You'll notice that with your interaction with me, I have 1, 2, 3. How many have I got? 1, 2, 3. I've got currently 4 different people that work for me on contract that do different, what I call, in my mind, those smaller cost jobs that don't have the expertise that I have, but I can train them to do things on my behalf. And so they do that. And that's me using my time effectively. If I'm in my sweet spot and I can do a high earn rate, which I tend to do, I don't want to be doing it on things that somebody with a lower skill rate could be doing. Because 1, I'm providing a job to them. And 2, I'm not spending my time on low efficient tasks. Spin selling, solution, problem, implication, need, payoff. Just absolutely fantastic. So much to be learned, from spin selling. There's an exercise book by Neil Rackham. It's all done on research. It's not like, this is not a salesperson writing this book. This is a researcher, so it's very scientifically driven, and how people buy. So important. And then the Challenger sales came out around 2008 time period. Once again, done on a lot of research, and really how the global financial crisis affected the way people sold. And because there just wasn't money for people to spend anymore. And so these 4 books, I feel, if you want a background in selling, read these. Even if you don't want a background, even if you don't want to do anything in selling, these 4 books will give you skills that will help you in relationships, in consulting, in all areas of your life. Okay, what's our next role? Our next role we're going to look at is pre-sales. Oopsie, too far, back up. There we go, pre-sales. So pre-sales, often, one second. A lot of my consultants want to become pre-sales consultants, because I see it so glamorous. You get to demo the technology, you're the superstar in the presentation, you do demos. But the thing is, a good pre-sales person has very strong, what I call situational awareness, very good interpersonal skills, in that they can read the people they're presenting to and understand whether people are on board or not, whether they're engaged, whether they think that this is a right fit for them or not, and they won't gloss over when it's not. They're good storytellers. They're not about, look what this technology do. Click here, click there, click there, click somewhere else. No, they're very good. They only touch the technology to illustrate a point, to get the customer over a line. Pre-sales is, I've done many years in pre-sales. I absolutely love it. I love having customers just be blown away by the art of the possible. And, the storytelling, it's a bit like infotainment as part of it. You got to get them, you got to get them engaged. They got to feel like, this solution is really going to solve problems for them. One of the best bit of training I ever did in my life was by this company called 2Win Global. They're an American company, and Microsoft put this training on when I was back in New Zealand many, many moons ago. And it was, 2-3 days worth of training. And they had a course called Demo to Win and Discovery to Win. I tell you what I learned in that course, it has set me in good stead throughout my career. There's a book called Demo to Win on Amazon. You can go check that out. If you ever get a chance to do a course by 2Win Global, I highly recommend that you do it. The original author and creator of the system and the company, was an ERP basically pre-sales person. And they used the concept of a movie metaphor and how you should lay out a demo. And that, appealing to the various brain functions, whether it be the amygdala, the neocortex, etc., and how ideas lodge in a customer's mind. A customer doesn't care about features of a product so much as how the feature will benefit them and their organization. And I love the storytelling nature that 2Win, Demo to Win, particularly takes you on a journey to do a very effective demos. Okay, let's move on. Next role we can have is marketing. This is partner facing, as you can see, and that is, how do you market Microsoft Biz Apps? It's a whole area in its own right. I had one lady working for me when I was in Sydney, and she said, I want to be an effective marketer. And she had started off kind of like as an intern grad growing through. And I said, listen, go out and get certified on a thing called HubSpot. And I don't know if you know HubSpot, you consider it competitor to Dynamics Marketing. Excuse me. But HubSpot was amazing in that they taught you all the other skills of marketing around it. And she's C-level in a company out of Sydney, a global company, startup, doing extremely well. And it comes down to being effective marketer and loving your passion. And so this might be for you, it might not be for you, but there is an opportunity. Most partner organizations have a marketing division. And if you have a good understanding of the technology, you're more better placed to be able to market the technology. So it's another area that you can specialize in. Practice management. Practice management, how many years have I been doing that? Over 10. I was a practice manager. And practice manager is massively fun. I loved it because you get to deal with so much stuff. I've got delayed here on the background. The biggest thing the practice manager addresses is that juggling resources for a project, delays on projects, not realizing their potential. And so, a practice manager need to intrinsically understand radical candor. They need to have high EQ. They need to understand project delivery, competing priorities. They need to manage these, dealing with ambiguity all the time, juggling people, projects, and deadlines. It's not, just about the tech. It's about the people and the deadlines. They need to manage things like cost, quality, time, and scope, and need to know how to create the balance between all those, not focusing more on one at the detriment to another. They need to understand utilization and getting that balance right. And they need the software to manage it all. My last project, internal project before I left Australia, was to implement the Microsoft Dynamics 365 project management within the practice, so we could understand our utilization. And it was great, fantastic, even though I was pretty buggy at that time. It was, very much V1 of the product. But these are the things that practice manager needs to know. They need to know their numbers. They need to know, what is their costs running at. They need to know what their margins are running at. They need to know what the profit is on these projects. And of course, balance their relationships with all the people that are affected by that. The next role you can have is the boss. You can be the boss. But to be a boss, you need to have a vision for where you want to go. What makes you unique? What do you need to do strategically? You need to have very good people smarts, technology smarts, business, financial. You need to be great at radical candor and have great EQ. And then in all areas that you're not strong in those, you need to know where to bring in the right people. A good boss is very effective at understanding their limitations and then skilling out their limitations. And one of the companies I was in, there were 3 of us that kind of worked in tandem. One that was brilliant on the project creation side. Me was on the pre-sale side. And then my colleague was brilliant when it came to sales. And us as a team were very, very strong and almost got to the point of being unstoppable. If I hadn't taken that career break that I did. As in it was just each year, we were able to do so much. We learned from our mistakes. We became more and more efficient. But the 3 of us working together was amazing. But at the end of the day, you want to be a boss, want to run your own business. There's responsibilities. The biggest one I think that you need to nail if you're going to be the boss is make sure your finances are sorted out. Because if your finances are sorted out, everything else is easy. If your finances are in disarray, it puts pressure on everybody. All your staff are under pressure. All your your suppliers, your contractors, everyone goes under pressure if your finances are not sorted. So if you want to be a boss and you're not strong in finance, make sure you get your 2IC that is very strong financially. Okay, next, Power Platform Administrator is another key role. So what I've done now, I'm switching now away from partner side to customer side. So what I see in a lot of organizations now is this role of the Power Platform Administrator or the Dynamics 365 Administrator. Often people have found themselves in this role. They're managing what somebody else built and maintaining it. They need to keep it running in the most efficient, tight way possible. They generally will sit in part of the IT department of the company. And it's probably a gateway into Microsoft Biz Apps. I see a lot of people come through that often with a technical background, they administer a system and go, you know what, I could add this new feature. I could add that functionality, and they start to build that out. When a company truly adopts the technology, though, they move into this next era of DevOps. And so I don't know if you've seen any of the stuff around Virgin Atlantic, but they're a good example of a DevOps type company where developers and operations are working together. Operations basically is the department that keeps the company operations tuned and running along. Developers, of course, developing new solutions. And so this idea is DevOps is really run for customers. Now, some companies are coming out with DevOps as a service where a partner really sells it. But, part of DevOps is really understanding how your business runs. And then, as you can see, plan, continuous feedback, operate, deploy, continuous integration, and build. And so lots of many projects, workloads being moved across to the platform, one after the other, tested, build, plan, operate, deploy, and then continuous integration and feedback going on between the developers and then the people running the operations and the subject matter experts. Here's a real life example of DevOps example in healthcare. And this was actually from New Orleans. And so here's an example of all the applications that this company had. It was 230 odd applications here, and each one had training and education, security, scheduling and registration, reporting operations, compliance, case management, accounts receivable, and claims. And they had 230 different applications for staff to learn. And what they did is they decided to move to the Power Platform and use that as the core. And they, as each of these applications ended life, they moved or created it in the Power Platform through a DevOps process. So a lot of organizations are rationalizing all the various software applications that they have and using a DevOps process to rationalize this out rather than necessarily engaging with a partner. Next, freelance or independent. What about if you have a taste to go freelance or independent? Well, what I recommend is that consider it long and hard. Make sure that you, before you resign or jump ship and move on into your new role, that you at least have tied up your first contract. I highly recommend that you have your first contract in place. You know, I've been freelancing now myself for the past bit over a year, and I've done okay, and I've had work continually come in. But once again, when you're a freelancer, your job is, you are marketing, you are sales, you're every part of your role. So you need to make sure that you get a good network. I've seen a lot of people that have gone freelance or independent, and they're good for a year, maybe two, and then they run out of everybody that knows them because they didn't maintain that. In fact, I just had an MVP get in touch with me recently, and she said to me, I've run out of work. You know, she's an independent, she's run out of work. What do I do? And so we started breaking down things like her LinkedIn profile, how often her skill sets, how often does she talk about the projects without revealing any private information about them. So people go, oh my gosh, what you're doing there, I want you to come and do it. Our dependent people, that's either feast or famine. And once the famine hits, it's kind of like they should have got their next job while they were feasting. And so think about how are you going to constantly get work in a freelance independent scenario. I highly recommend a book. I know that some of you have read called A Business of One. And it really sets you up to change your thinking of not just being a freelancer, but being just a one-person business. And it totally changes the way you look at setting yourself up so you never actually have to return to work. I was just reading a survey the other day conducted across America and the United Kingdom. And it showed that pay parity between males and females, where in the normal world was around 36% discrepancy between pay parity. When you're a freelancer independent, it dropped to 3%. So massive boost. Most people that become freelancers, 86%, never actually become a freelancer independent, that maintain it because they love to have the control of their lifestyle, take on the projects that they want. You know, my ultimate goal is to work 9 months of the year and take 3 months of the year doing stuff that I like to play on, like particularly travel. And I really want to immerse into a whole bunch of cultures. So as a freelancer, an independent person myself, and a business of one, you know, I have a legal entity set up called Cloverbase that allows me to legally run my accounting, transact myself through it. But my ultimate goal is that I only want to work 9 months of the year. I want to make enough money to cover 12 months, but spend 3 months of the year with friends, with family, with travel, and just see everything that's possible to experience in this amazing world. Only limited by one's mind. The next one I want you to look at is you go to Microsoft. You could decide that you want a career at Microsoft, start your own business or practice with Microsoft. Sorry, first step here. This one here, start your own practice, right? We've been a lot of consolidation happening in the market over the last couple of years. Big companies like Hitachi, Avanade, Power Objects, etc., have gobbled up a lot of the small players, HCL, to name a few. And so there's now room for a whole bunch of boutique consultancies. When I started Magnetism in New Zealand, that was a boutique consultancy, you know, that has grown up, 20, 30 odd staff now work at Magnetism. They make a good earner, but they've got no desire to become like a massive corporate. The beauty is that the market, once again, is ripe and ready for new practices, new modern cloud-only practices that, you know, are really, if you like, digital agencies and creating digital solutions that really empower organizations in a very niche market. So there's a lot of opportunity there. You could consider, you know, doing a startup, becoming an independent software vendor or ISV and start a brand new company and go out and go alone. There's so many people doing this. Microsoft announcing this week at Inspire conference massive changes around the ISV program because they see it as over $120 billion industry that's available. So much opportunity. You know, with startups, you need to be solid in what you're doing. You need to understand, read lots of books around starting a business, get the right skills involved, make sure you got money, capital, that type of thing for your ramp up period, and make sure you've got a good go-to-market strategy. But it's another option for you, and it's an option that I'm also involved in at the moment myself. Finally, this is the one here. Go to careers.microsoft.com and consider, do you want a career for Microsoft? Do you want to work for them? There's so many roles, whether it's a solution sales professional, technology solutions professional, global black belt, partner seller, Microsoft consulting services, or all the different parts of Microsoft that you could get a role in. They are just as hungry and looking for skills from people within the Power Platform community as they resource and scale all around the world in the 14 geographies that they're operating in. So Microsoft, you know, as in one of the chaps on my last one, he was offered a role as a TSP a couple of weeks after finishing this last year from up in Canada. And so I did a lot of coaching with him even as he approached and went for that role, and so pleased to see that he was offered it. And so that kind of brings us to this point. Where are you going to go? What decisions will you make? What will you make? Another quote here is, you have brains in your head, you have feet in your shoes. You can steer yourself any direction you choose. Another one from Dr. Seuss. You really can go anywhere you want in life. I truly believe that because I'm a proof point of it myself. But that brings us to the end of this cohort. I'm going to open for questions, but I'll just wrap up a few things before I do. In the assignment today, you will see a link to the 90-day mentoring challenge feedback form. And in that, I'm asking you to, the Net Promoter Score on a scale of 1 to 5, you know, what would be the likelihood that you recommend this program to a colleague or friend? Fill out the other areas on there for me. I would greatly appreciate this feedback. So what's next? Complete the final assignment. It's quite a detailed assignment for you to do, and then schedule a final one-on-one with me. So each of you can book a one-on-one with me over the coming weeks. There's my email address, mark.smith@cloverbase.com, and let's set up your final one-on-one. Now, in this final one-on-one, you will see what you need to include in it in the assignment. It's going to be you presenting to me based on these 6 cohorts that we've done. What are you going to do with it? What is your action steps moving forward? What changes are you going to make? And where does your next 12, 24, and 36 months look like? I only want you to look 3 years ahead, but I want you to come to that a one-on-one with me to present this back to me, to get my thoughts on it, to pick my brains on anything that's still outstanding in your mind that you would like to cover or feel needs to be covered that's personal to you. And where I started, I conclude around pay it forward. How are you going to take what you've learned? How are you going to pay it forward in the weeks and months ahead as you continue your journey in Microsoft Biz Apps? And with that, I conclude. I now hand over to you to ask any questions that you would like to ask. Okay, what do we got here? Questions. Change management from 2011 to V9, massive. I would consider it like a brand new application. It is that different, the journey between 2011 and the current version of Dynamics we have. So yeah, massive amount of change management. Would I recommend an AWS certification? No, not so much, just because I've had no interest in it, so I couldn't recommend something I've not had any experience or interest in. No harm, though. No harm. It's all learning, right?
Hey, Mark, Manish here.
Okay, hang on a sec. I haven't got you loud enough. Let me just turn my volume up. Okay, what was that?
Can you hear me now, Mark?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, so Mark, thanks for the information. So right now, my profile is more of a technical,
Yep.
but moving forward with the change of our platform and all, and by going through your idea as well as ideas from different other MVPs and experts in our domain,
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to move more toward the functional domain. I mean, instead of going more of a DevOps engineer or a PCF control developer and all.
Yep. Yep.
I'm planning to go more toward working on Power Platform Flow, Power BI and all instead of going through hardcore coding.
Good.
But so what would be the profile in the future? Because other than the three profiles you have mentioned, that technical, functional, and solution architect, these days in market we
Yep.
also have techno functionals and all, right? So what about that? Do we have any scope from techno functional perspective and then moving forward to solution architect, or so what's the scope for some roles where if required we can do technical stuff also, but majorly we will be the people who will be the client focus, or we will be doing the functional part.
Yes. So I just see them as kind of like different hats, if you like, that you put on. You know, I've just seen too many companies come up with too many ways of defining somebody's role in the business. That's why I keep it really simple. You're either functional, you're either developer, or you're an architect. Now, am I saying that you can't, work across both? Man, I had many consultants that wear multiple hats, but I just don't think it warrants another new category, because the other combination of all the other categories kind of address it. In your situation, moving from technical, the biggest thing that you need to, do, in my opinion, would be get into human-centered design and understand that, because the value you could bring with human-centered design skills added to your technical skills, I think would be massively, massively powerful. Make sense?
Okay, yeah, sure. Thanks, Mark.
Awesome. Anybody else? No one else coming off mute? Oh, looks like we're going to finish early today. Nobody's keen to ask a question.
Hi, Mark. This is Raghav.
Hey, how are you, Rago?
Yep, good. This is not based on Cohort, but just so I saw your blog on dynamic CRM for sales. Like it's not up to the market speed or something.
Yep.
So did you got a response from Microsoft, or did it reach them, or what's like?
So we're right on the cusp of, because Ignite is in play at the moment, that a lot of the Microsoft people that this would affect are actually at that event. But it's had over 8,000 views, the post, so it's definitely got a lot of interest. One of the comments was from an author, a well-published author in the subject area. When I looked him up on Amazon, he's got about 3 or 4 books on the subject, and really feel that, CRM, the current version we have is CRM 1.0, and the world is really now wanting CRM 2.0. And so there's been a lot of feedback, and I am expecting, in the coming weeks, to get feedback directly from Microsoft in it, because I know it's been, it's now got on to James, Alyssa, and Hayden Stafford's radar.
Right.
Know they're it. And so I'm expecting, what I was really wanting to do is actually give James Phillips some ammunition to go to his senior PM and say, what's he talking about here? Is this right? and get them to go, you know what? He's right. We've not done any work on it. As I referenced a book that was written on CRM 1.0, and you'll see, if you look at the subjects within the book, they are accounts, they are, contacts, they're leads, they're opportunities, they're product, and then there are, quote, order, invoice. Come on, the world's massively changed. And I think that needs to be addressed in the application.
Okay, how did this thought came to you? Like this is really what, like it flicked and you just put a note to your mobile and then started blogging, or it took like 2 to 3 months, or it's just a week?
That idea has been percolating for about 3 months. So it's an idea I grabbed on my device. I thought about it, and what I didn't go into detail is that customer service, Microsoft bought Paracha and moved a whole bunch of the functionality from Paracha into into Dynamics 365 for customer service. So customer service has actually continued to have an evolution. The case management entity, the idea of putting cases on hold, that never used to be back there in the day. The whole entitlements, etc., never used to be there. So, and the knowledge base was crude in the old system, is now quite sophisticated. So I feel that we're continuing to see development in that area, but sales has had just no kind of love, apart from, a bit of lipstick, to actually improve how it looks. Most of the other functionality that sales has received is because the functionality has gone in at a platform level. In other words, that flow works so that you can use Power BI. They're all platform things. They're not unique to the sales app.
Thanks, Mark. I think you answered my question. Yep.
Pleasure. 5 minutes to go. Do we have any more questions, or are you going to take them all up on Facebook? Nope. Going. All right. We'll sign off. Thanks, everybody. I look forward to seeing your feedback once the assignment's up, and I'll post the recording, of course, online at the end of today before I go to bed. Ciao, ciao. Have a good one.